Hi, and welcome to the Working Tools Podcast for part 2 of Masonic Tattoos.
Ladies and gentlemen, brethren all, welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, a casual conversation around Freemasonry. First, it's important to note that our opinions and thoughts are our own and do not reflect those of our Grand Lodge or respective craft or concordant bodies. Please connect with us and ask questions, either here on YouTube or on our Facebook page. We'd also appreciate a thumbs up and especially any comments on our videos.
Welcome to the Working Tools Podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Worshipful Brother Steven Chung from Prince Charles Lodge, number 153 in Kelowna, British Columbia. And tonight I am joined with Very Worshipful Brother Matt Appel from Mill Creek, number 243 in Edmonds, Washington. And down in the bottom there is Very Worshipful Brother David Colbeth from King Solomon, number 60 in Auburn, Washington. And joining us again for episode 2 is Brother Dave Baran from Mount Garibaldi 127 in Pemberton, British Columbia. Thanks again for joining us, guys, and I look forward to this. I know when we left part 1, David Colbeth had a couple more questions, so we'll let you start off with the questions.
Well, thanks, Steve. So, one of the things that is this big controversy in a lot of jurisdictions, at least in Washington, is if you put the square and compass on something, shirt, t-shirt, logo, whatever, you're supposed to get the Grand Master's approval. And so, the problem is that you can go on the internet and get just about anything you want with the square and compass and not have to get the Grand Master's logo. So as a Mason, though, creating a fresh design potentially on a Mason, there's a lot of guys that would have that idea that you'd have to get the Grand Master's approval for a design. And is there any kind of a blanket approval, or have you talked to anybody about that, or has anybody complained about that, or there's a lot of questions in that question?
That's all right. I have not encountered that, to be honest. I haven't talked to anybody about it. The way I look at it is these are universal symbols. Like the square and compass represent geometry as well as symbols, right? So we'll have to do a podcast on geometry because it's really hard to explain without having a board here drawing it behind me. But the square represents a two-dimensional physicality, which can be represented by drawing circles. Say you take two lines like this, you draw a circle in the center, you draw one at the edge there, one at the edge here, one at the edge there, one at the edge there. And you're creating a two-dimensional flat grid through that, which if you drew lines between all the points, it would look like a piece of graph paper. And that's kind of your base nature, so your base reality. And then upon that, you have the compass, which represents a different type of geometry, which is six-sided geometry or three-dimensional geometry. So everything you draw upon that grid that you create by, they call it the flower of life. So you draw a circle, and this is universal. So anybody can do it. They've been doing it since ancient times. It takes no measurement and no calculations whatsoever to create perfect geometry. You draw a circle, you go to the edge of that circle, you draw another one, and you go to the intersecting point of that circle and draw another circle, and so on and so forth, forever, going outward. And through this, you're creating a three-dimensional grid pattern, so you can draw every three-dimensional platonic solid possible in that arrangement. So with those two together, I use them every single day. Actually, one of my tools is a compass, and I use it every day to draw, because drawing a perfect circle is very important, and having perfect geometry is very important. And when you go back in time to, the great Renaissance artists of the past, you can take all of their paintings, all the greats, all these amazing paintings that are renowned all over the world, and you can lay them out on these geometric grids, and they lay out perfectly so that you have these proportions that work perfectly. You have characters in one side of the painting that are equally proportionate to characters in the other side of the painting, and the proportions are the same proportions that our reality exists on and the way that our mind thinks. So we look at things and we determine whether they're good, they look good, or they look right, or they look wrong, and what makes them look right is them being on the same proportions that we exist in, because then it makes sense to us. Our brains are like, oh, cool, that's like me. It makes sense. I look at that, that's cool. That's why the temples and stuff in Egypt are so amazing, is because they're based on these same proportions.
Fibonacci.
Yeah, exactly. Every day, all day. Yeah. Fibonacci and sacred geometry, essentially. Yeah. But it's less sacred and more just underlying all reality. And it's not that there's any... spiritual.
It's not secret. It's sacred, but not secret.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's nothing secret. It exists in Masonry, and it exists in many other practices too. But when you actually utilize it, it's a whole nother story. I work with my apprentices quite often. That's the first thing I get them to do, because you can start to see. Go ahead.
I think that's one of the cool things about Masonry, is that if you delve into it like you've done, is that we find out these secret, sacred things that are supposed to have been taught through the generations about Masonry, about operative Masonry, basically, or operative design and beautification that weren't. And sacred geometry is one of those, which that is in nature and in art and in all those things that you talk about.
So
exactly.
So I got a question for you. How has either the symbolisms or the esoteric side of Freemasonry influenced tattooing for you?
I'm not sure if it really has influenced it per se, but what it does is it allows me to have a perspective now on things that I was already doing and an understanding. Because you know how you can do something that somebody told you how to do, but you don't really know how you're doing it, and it comes out a certain way. You don't really know what it means. You're just doing it. Where now I'm seeing a lot more meaning in what I'm doing. Each thing that I'm doing, no longer am I just looking at it as sacred geometry. I'm looking at it as something much more. And I see it's just like, because each one of us has a different perspective, so sitting in lodge, each one of us experiences a different thing. And that insight I have on the world, and I guess my artistic experiences and creative endeavors, is the same reflection as to what I experience in lodge, which maybe isn't the same as everybody else's, but I'm now seeing connections everywhere in the world that I didn't before, which, helps everything. You feel a bit more at ease when you see things happening in the world, or events take place, or just anything really. And you can see the correlations through all things, and I can see how Masonry, how much more important it is than just a group of people hanging out. I can see its deep roots in our reality through this geometry and the principles that I'm learning as I go. And the principles that I'm learning as I go are reflecting on principles that I already knew but didn't quite understand, which is now shining a whole bunch of light, which is always fun.
Very cool. Yeah, I really look forward to that episode you're going to do with us on geometry and all that. And maybe with any luck, we can tie that in with one of Matt Appel's contacts, who's also a tattoo artist. That he was going to come and join us tonight. And I'm sure that would be a really cool episode to have the two of you talking about that and its relationship in Masonry. Pretty cool.
Do you ever have any guys ask you for designs that are entered apprentice or fellow craft specific versus Master Mason? It seems like most symbolisms are probably Master Mason related, but just curious.
Yeah, no, I haven't had anybody looking for that symbolism. Not yet, at least. Like, to me, I haven't given myself a Masonic tattoo yet because I'm waiting. My wife just got back into tattooing off maternity leave. So if she does it, then, tattooing yourself, you don't care so much. But when somebody else is doing it, you can kind of sit there and relax and let them do a good job, But the way I looked at it is I feel that until I make Master Mason, I don't, in my eyes, for myself, everybody else is different and what they do is okay. But I feel until I was a Master Mason, I didn't quite deserve to have a Masonic tattoo. You know what I mean? Within myself, right? But if somebody else wants to get a fellow craft tattoo, that's completely okay.
Well, that's kind of, I was wondering too, how would you, I didn't realize you weren't a Master Mason, so that's a good question.
I am now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
In our lodge, we don't mind if an apprentice or a fellow craft has some kind of, jewelry is often a thing, a ring, maybe from their uncle or grandpa or someone, or some kind of outward expression of them being a Mason. And some lodges are very strict, or even jurisdictions are very strict about, you can't wear anything or can't have any display of Masonry until you're a Master Mason. And we tell them, not even a pin from lodge. And we tell them in our lodge that, yeah, it's okay. Go ahead and wear your, as a brand new Master Mason or entered apprentice Mason, you're so excited. You want to tell the world and your family and everybody that you're a Mason now. Go ahead and wear the pin or go ahead and wear that thing. Just make sure that if somebody were to ask you about it, that you notify them or let them know in the most Masonic way that you're at that level or whatever, so they know how to communicate with you or not to communicate with you. It's not a big deal.
Yeah. I totally understand that. And to be honest, it's like I have a extremely high standard for myself in my life, which I know not everybody else even wants to live like. So I completely understand if somebody wants to memorialize every step of their journey. It's, every step of my journey so far has been spectacular. All the way down to sitting outside the lodge, wondering what's happening in there. And it's been pretty cool. And I think it really depends on the person. It's your perspective, right? So a tattoo is for you, and I can understand people not being okay with it, because there's two different ways that people get tattoos. One is so that everybody else sees it and it's, hey, look at me. And then there's another tattoo which is just for me. It doesn't matter if anybody sees it or not. And I think that's where you can really differentiate between that, whether somebody should get a tattoo that early on or not. Are they doing it just for everybody else, just to show off, or are they getting it for themselves to memorialize within their own psyche that specific part of the journey? And I think that's where you can really kind of get an insight to how that person's taking Masonry, even.
Yeah, I love your idea. I hadn't thought about it, but I love your idea of that it is a milestone or a bookmark, as I think is what the word you used, in someone's life, and that makes a lot of sense. I've often thought about getting my daughter. I have two daughters. I thought about getting their names tattooed somewhere, and why would I do that? Because it's a bookmark. It's a milestone in your life that's important to you, and I want to memorialize that. So I like Steven's. And as I think about it now, you're right. Most every tattoo I've ever seen is kind of related somehow to that person's life in a milestone or a bookmark or a moment in their life that is important to them.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. I was mentioning to one of our brothers that I was thinking about getting the Working Tools Podcast logo as a tattoo.
Plug.
Perfect. I know a guy.
Yeah, right. And I figured I knew the original artist and everything, but I have to go all the way to Pemberton, right? And
everywhere I go I go to Salmon Arm in the summer at least 5 or 6 times, so I'm sure we can make it happen.
Oh yeah, that's only like an hour and 50 minutes if I push it. and I'll come
That's
if you're coming to Slam and
I'll
Arm in
come
the
to
summer.
you.
All right, cool. I got a spare room. The debate that people had when we discussed it in our festive board was, well, that doesn't look like the working tools, right? And then, of course, those funny Canadian guys do this. They have different working tools than we do in our ancient lodge, right? And it was like, well, that's a different set of tools, right? And so then it was like, all right, well, I guess I'll have to put a little more thought into that, right? But
so our language, I think it's in clear text, so we could probably say it, man. I guess I can bleep it out if it's not true, but we say the working tools of masturbation are all the tools of masonry indiscriminately. And so it's all of them. It's not one or two or three. It's all of them. So I think you could decide. Like, I think Dave's made a great point that I love the idea of the multifaceted artwork that you do, that you have different tools for different things. And so you're learning how to use those tools for different aspects of your business. In our case, we use tools, if you will, symbols for different aspects of our life. And so depending on what you want to work on, that's the tool you pick up and try to master or develop that skill. And same thing with symbolism and masonry. You look at something you're working on, and you say, how can I apply that to my life? And you work on that.
Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
I think that the Working Tools Podcast logo fit really good right there.
Perfect. And then you can see it every episode. You can be like, represent.
Yeah, right?
Well, if you want to see it in every episode, you can put it right here.
The only thing is, which way do I put it? Right? So
you put it so when your arm is down, it's facing up, so that as an upright human being, when you stand normal, it's standing with you.
I like that. Okay. All right. Yep. And we can get some shameless plugs where I go sleeveless. Right?
There you go. Yeah. We'll have to do a Working Tools podcast of me tattooing the Working Tools podcast symbol on you.
I like it.
Live show.
I like that.
That would be awesome.
We could do a premiere.
You get to watch Steve cry a little bit.
Well, I finally figured out how to get a tattoo without focusing on the pain, right? And that's to get a good set of headphones and watch something like what I watched last time was Top Gun, right? Lots of activity, lots of noise, right? Things to distract me from the pain that was going on, right? And so loud music.
It's funny because you don't want to move too much when you laugh, huh?
Yeah.
No funny movies. Very serious and sad ones. Normally, what I tell people is just like life, the only way to overcome pain is through the breath. So if you notice anytime in life, when you're anxious or stressed, or you're dealing with a difficult situation and you're having a hard time, if you take a second and just do like a self-check, you'll notice you're probably not breathing, or you're breathing at the bottom half of your lungs, or you're holding your breath. And when you do that, your body experiences ridiculous amounts of pain because it needs oxygen to operate. So a lot of the pain can be removed from the tattooing process just through nice, slow, deep breaths. And as you feel the pain, you breathe into the pain. So the more pain you feel, the more deeper breaths you take. And all of a sudden, like a wave, that pain will subside and you'll kind of breach out of the water above it and be able to control it.
Or you can just experience so much pain that you pass out and let the guy finish.
It's good until they wake up with a jolt and I'm like, big line down the back.
Yeah, well, okay. I promise I won't cry. I promise I'll videotape the whole thing. And when you come up to Okanagan this summer, we'll get together and do that.
Sounds great. And I look forward to it.
A lot of guys have suggested that I should get a tattoo to cover up my new scar. My thought is, though, in about 10 or 15 years, I have to cut it open again and replace the battery. So, and so I thought, well, if they got to cut it open, they're gonna mess up the tattoo. So how do you do that? You don't have to kind of build in the idea that they're going to cut it open. I suppose.
Yeah, if that is what needs to happen, then we can work that into the tattoo. Just put a zipper, or like a little dotted
There you
line,
go.
and then they know where to cut. You do the tattoo around it and be like, cut here.
Exactly. Have an arrow. It says battery goes here.
Yeah, exactly. You put the little battery symbol on it.
There you go.
Well, some of you guys are saying I should get an Iron Man logo tattooed over it. But.
Yeah, there you go. That's cool.
A giant set of stitches, right? Tattooed.
Yeah. No, I had a client of mine when I was quite young. He was a character of, he was going through dark times in his life and whatnot. I guess he got robbed or something, and he had a full chest piece, and they had cut him from here down to there while they were in his bedroom in the middle of the night. Scary story, definitely, But the doctor actually looked at his tattoos and was like, oh, these are pretty expensive, aren't they? So he did his best to line them back up, and that doctor did a damn good job. Yeah.
Nice.
Cool.
I was quite surprised. Yeah.
So this isn't Masonic necessarily, but do you have that experience where people come in, maybe they've gotten a bad tattoo or something they want to change or they want to embellish, like a scar in my case, that they need to either fix or cover up or whatever? Do you have
all the
happen?
time?
Yeah.
All the time. Yeah. Yeah. We make the ugly decisions in your life beautiful.
Very cool. Any Masons, without giving away names and stuff, any Masons that have had that where maybe they've had a tattoo of something and they go, oh, I'm a Mason now, or I've made a change in my life and I want it to be Masonic or I want it to be something different? Anything that's striking that you get?
I haven't done any cover-ups using Masonic symbolism yet, but you never know.
Sure.
I'll film it and then you can watch it.
This is neither here nor there, but I remember reading and I think it was a Scottish Rite magazine a couple of years ago. There was a tattoo artist out of, I think, Baltimore, somewhere down there, who was doing, he would cover up gang tattoos if you wanted to have your gang tattoo altered.
I've heard of that. Yeah, that's pretty cool. We don't have a whole lot of gang tattoos in, especially Pemberton, but Lower Mainland, even where I lived before, where it's full of gangs, there's honestly wasn't a whole lot of gang tattoos coming through the door. Mostly it's just poor decisions, maybe, especially because the tattoo industry 20 years ago was not what it is today. So quality was not there. The artists did not, a lot of them didn't use the same kind of, regard for sanitation that we do now. And a lot of tattoos from back then didn't heal up so nice. So we definitely do a lot of cover-ups of that regard. Or, sometimes somebody tells you they're a tattoo artist and you unfortunately haven't learned yet to watch people's actions, not their words, and you get a tattoo from them and you realize, well, maybe they quite aren't a tattoo artist yet. And we do lots of those cover-ups as well, making them beautiful.
Very cool. What's the most incredible design you think you've done that's Masonic that you can talk about? Really, in any medium, doesn't have to be tattoos, I guess. So you said you do multiple mediums. Do you do like the huge portrait behind you? Do you do Masonic portraits like that or Masonic artwork?
I actually did a portrait for our recently passed worshipful master of Garibaldi Lodge. I don't have it on me because it's at the lodge. We're keeping it there for the rest of the year and then giving it to his wife at the end of the year.
Nice.
But yes, absolutely. Definitely. To me, everything in my life has lots of meaning. So just, a few interactions with somebody who I didn't know that well, but made an impact on my life. It's important to memorialize these things. So I did one for them. And I guess the rest of my artwork, I guess you could say has Masonic symbolism in it, but you'd have to be a Mason to look at it to know. Because each piece I do, I really like the Renaissance paintings and old alchemical artwork. So it's very extremely symbolic. Everything in it means something. And a lot of times I'll take something that's a symbol, and I will change that symbol into something else, maybe an object or an animal or a person that embodies that symbol without putting the symbol in there. You know what I mean? And yeah, I guess every single thing that I do has that in it. Even this, the geometry in the, hold on, I'm gonna flip this camera around. The geometry in this woman's face, I don't know if you can see it, but I could even consider that Masonic when you go down to, when you really follow it all the way through, and how the geometry works. Because you can lay that right over, you can lay that right over top of a square and compass, and it lines up.
Do you use particular?
But in fact,
sorry, go ahead, Dave.
Sorry?
I was going to ask, do you do particular angles? Are there, like, in theory, the worshipful masters, past masters, use the quadrant to indicate that they've understood, well, at least in Washington anyway. I know you guys have some funny symbol up there for the past master. Sorry, but in Washington and many other jurisdictions, they use the quadrant instead of the square, or at least in addition to the square, to signify that the master has now understood how to use the square and compass properly, and the sextant. And it's, I was saying, I want to say sextant. It's not. It's the quadrant is. The compasses are open to a particular angle on the quadrant, which is 60 degrees, which makes for an equilateral triangle. And so I was curious if that particular angular methods, does that flow into...
The angles mean a lot, like what I was speaking about earlier.
Yeah.
In just how, just even from a two-dimensional to a three-dimensional perspective, the specific thing you're talking about, I know that tonight, that's what I'm going to be researching. But yes, the angles matter, definitely, in everything. All the angles matter. And each angle is, that we could do a whole podcast just on that, on symbolism.
For sure.
It goes deep. If you want me to talk for an hour, that's a good way to start it.
Well, we really appreciate you coming back on the show and being part of it, and look forward to another one. Again, there's lots and lots more to come, I'm sure.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dave. Thank you so much. I honestly, I did not expect an episode on tattoos, 2 episodes on tattoos, to go so deep. That was very cool.
Oh, we haven't really gone deep. Dave, when Dave goes deep, get prepared, because you got to really pay attention to piece it all together, what he's connecting.
I guess I just expected it to be skin deep.
That's what most people think, to be honest. But
thousands of comedians out of work, and he's trying
to... See,
I got ridiculed for it being punny. Anyway.
Yeah.
All right, well...
No, I think...
Yeah, what was the name of your shop again? I'm sorry.
You just gotta cut me off at some point.
What was the name of your shop down or up in BC there?
It's Method Tattoo.
Method Tattoo. Okay.
Yeah, what's the website address?
It's www.methodtattoo.com.
Perfect.
And
you'll remember that.
And look with Instagram, Facebook, all that good stuff.
Yeah, look down below in the description of the video, and we'll have his link in there.
Perfect. Excellent. Yeah. And we look forward to having. We definitely look forward to having you on again in future episodes. So thanks again for your time, Dave, and guys. We really appreciate everybody's time tonight.